Today, we're going to talk about energy costs. I looked at my electric bill for my house from Alliant Energy, and I found out that my electric cost per kilowatt hour is about 16 cents per kilowatt hour. You can find that on your bill. I have mine over here. Also, looking at Google, I know that even though the Tesla Model Y Juniper has a 75 kilowatt hour battery, it really takes 82.5 kilowatt hours to charge it fully because there's losses with transmission and heat and other things like that. So it's really 82.5 kilowatt hours. I have the dual motor long range with the upgraded wheels, so I get about a 300 mile range. I'm rounding down a little bit, it's like 302, 303, something like that. So if you take the 300 mile range and you look at the 82.5 kilowatt hours to charge it, you get about $13.04 at my home to charge it from completely dead to completely full. So that works out to around 4 cents a mile. Now, if we wanted to compare this to my previous car, previously my wife and I had a 2020 BMW X3 M40i SUV, and that car got, claimed 21 city, 27 highway miles per gallon. It's probably less than that, especially with the way you drive, but you got to go with averages because obviously even with an electric car, if you floor it all the time, you're not going to get the range out of it that you do when you go as, I don't want to say as slow as possible, but as economical as possible. I tend to have a happy right foot, which means I never get the proper miles per gallon. In fact, in my drift car that I have, it's a newer car and I can see what my average miles per gallon is. And when I got the car, it was like 25 and I have it down to like 9. So depending on how you drive, depends on that. So in the BMW, it took premium fuel because it was a performance engine, turbo engine. So you need 91, 93 octane fuel. In Wisconsin, where we live, for the last year, the average premium fuel price was around $4.02. So looking at an estimated 21 miles per gallon, you got about 19 cents per mile versus the 4 cents on the Model Y. And then if you assumed higher to the 27 miles per gallon, you're looking at 15 cents per mile. So not great. Now, instead of looking at the car that we just had, if you want to compare it to, like, what's the flagship miles per gallon car out there, you think of a Toyota Prius. So a 2025 Toyota Prius LE front wheel drive, those things get an estimated 57 miles per gallon, which is pretty incredible. And they take cheaper fuel, regular fuel, 87 octane. So in my area, again, over the last year, the average fuel cost was $3.34. So taking that out, you get about 5 cents per mile. So that's really close to the Tesla. So 4 cents for our car to charge at home versus 5 cents for a Prius. Now, while that sounds like the Tesla is always cheaper, that's not necessarily true. We're talking about charging at my house. If you're on a road trip and you go to a supercharging stations, their cost varies by location. Also, supercharging stations tend to have peak and off-peak hours. So if you go to their, if you look on your Tesla app and you look at the charging stations, they have graphs that show you on peak, off-peak hours. But if you're on a road trip, statistically, you're going to be hitting it during peak hours, so you're going to pay a little bit more. But instead of paying per kilowatt hour, they charge you per time, per duration. So if you do a 5-minute charge, a 10-minute charge, a 20-minute charge, that is all going to be dependent upon where you charge and the time of day that you are charging. So I did a little scenario. So I live in Sheboygan, Wisconsin. Let's say we're going to do a road trip going to Indianapolis, Indiana. I put it into the Tesla app to see what our trip is. It's 329.3 miles. If I was doing that drive in reality, I would charge my battery to 100%, which would change your charge point. But just leaving things as they are right now, I'm at 80% battery. So the GPS says in my trip, I need to stop in Munster, Indiana, and I'll have about 12% battery. I'll get there at 11:50 a.m., which means I'm in that surcharge time period, that peak period. It says I need to charge for 25 minutes to make it to my final destination. Now, 25 minutes might seem like a long time. It depends on the person you are. I'm not really here to talk about like ideal road trip scenarios. If you have kids, you can get out and stretch your legs. You can cut that down. You can break it into like 2 10-minute charges or something like that, so you don't have one 25-minute charge. Since it is over a 5-hour drive, you could drive 2-3 hours, charge a little bit, drive a little bit farther, charge a little bit, especially if you're stopping to use the bathroom. But we're just gonna not play with that. I'll make that in a different video. Right now, we'll just say you stop for a 25-minute charge, and we're going to look at the cost. So in this peak window at that Tesla location, you are looking at a 25-minute charge at 41 cents a minute. So 25 minutes times 45 cents a minute charge, you're looking at about $10.25 to charge your Tesla. Now, when I leave and I get to Indianapolis, I have 11% at my final destination. So let's look at the total cost of the whole trip using the Tesla. So since I charged it at home at full, so we'll start at full, which will be 0, or 80%, I should say. By the time I got to Munster. By the time I got there, I used from 80% down to 12%, which means that took 68% of my battery. Because it's an 82.5 kilowatt battery, we did the 68% of that, which means I used 56.1% of my battery, or 56.1 kilowatt hours to make the trip. And using the cost to charge it at my house of about 15-16 cents, that brings my total of that leg of the trip to cost me $8.86 because I charged at home. Now, because of the 12-minute or 25-minute charge, which cost me $8.86, with my final destination being 12%, which means that charge I made in Munster is about the same. If we just around 11-12% is about the same, that means I have to add that $8.86 to my home charging cost. So $10.25 plus $8.86 brings my final cost of $19.11. So $19.11 to make it from where I live all the way down to, the 320 miles to Indianapolis. Now, so $19.11. That's a combination of home charging and supercharging to make that trip. So a $19 one-way trip, not too bad. To complete this scenario, let's say we did it with the BMW we used to have. So the 329.3 miles with the 27 mile per gallon average, which is very optimistic, with the $4 cost of fuel, which we'd be able to fill up at our house and make the trip in one go. We're looking at around a $49 cost. So $19 to do it with the Tesla, $49 to do it with the BMW. Now, again, let's flip it and say you had a Toyota Prius. So the Toyota Prius, doing the same thing, 329 miles, 57 miles per gallon, average of $3 per gallon. You do the math out, it's looking at about $17.50. So in that scenario, the Prius is actually cheaper than the Tesla by $2, $1.50-ish. So it's not always that electric cars are cheaper, it's the convenience. But that is just the cost breakdown to go from A to B. For my daily charge, because I'm always at home and most of my driving's around town, I do the vast majority of my charging at home, and it does happen to be cheaper. And this, again, we're just talking about energy versus fuel costs. We're not talking about maintenance and all the other fees that could come if you start comparing, because that gets down a pretty deep rabbit hole. I'm just looking at what's your trip cost for energy versus fuel. If you have any specific questions, please leave a comment below. I'm happy to answer and address your question specifically in its own video. If you found this video helpful, please like and subscribe. Thank you.